great to be here this afternoon. My name is Shivani Landy. I'm part of the global business consulting team at FICO. I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. Very jet-lagged at the moment, so please don't ask me any hard questions today. I'll be okay tomorrow. I have been with FICO for the past 4 years, and I work in the consulting team, as I've mentioned before. So what we do is we help our customers implement best-in-class strategies based on the trends that we're seeing in the environment. I specialize in collections transformation programs. So these are journeys that we walk with our clients on. So today what we're going to share with you is what we're seeing in the industry, what you should be thinking about in order to set your organizations up to get to that best in class, and actually just stay relevant, be relevant. Jaron is going to join me a little bit later on to share how we can incorporate some of our platform technologies into the ideas and insights that I'm going to share with you before. So, as I mentioned, I'm from South Africa. We're a very, very traditional society. And when I was thinking about how do I start off describing this journey that we're walking with our clients on, and my younger brother's getting married, and we were talking about this, and I thought, I really like this traditional thing and moving towards a digital environment. And I thought, let me just bring something a little bit interesting that you can think about. So you guys know the tradition of something old, something new, something old, something borrowed, and something blue, which is a general wedding tradition that most of us practice. And if I tie it back to digital transformation, I looked at the something old. So most banks today have got legacy systems. That's the something old. In order for us to get to the new environment, we've got to use those legacy systems in order to get to where we want to be. So it's a transformation of using the old and bringing it into the new world that we're moving towards. So the old principles around systems, using data, credit fundamentals, and sometimes even fraud fundamentals still remains the same. That's the something old that we bring in. The something new. Over the past 3 days, you've heard about new technology that has come into the marketplace. And that's evolving at such a rapid pace. Today we have things that are going to evolve tomorrow. Linked to that is customer preferences, technological changes. How we live our lives has really changed from a technology perspective. The something borrowed. Now, a digital transformation requires a lot of effort, components, and people to bring it together. And that's the something borrowed. I'm going to take you through a use case of a client that I worked with over a 3-year program. And here we borrowed capabilities from different areas in order to bring everything together. And that's the something borrowed. The something blue, apart from FICO, so in the traditional sense, what the blue really represents is love, trust, and compatibility. We speak about customer experience today, and that's really where the blue comes in terms of a digital transformation program. So if we have to tie this back to a collections environment, traditionally, in a collections world, you'd have certain capabilities that are the old. So in a traditional environment, you'd probably have a dialer, which you would communicate with your customers with. You'd have a case management tool. This helps you schedule your calls, when to bring your collections actions in, how to manage your agencies from a performance and outsource perspective. how to log notes and results of outcomes, and generally use it to manage your collections operations team. Linked to that, you'll have management information. Basic management information to determine how effective your collections operations are, how effective your strategies are, and how to measure operational performance. What you would probably do is outsourcing or debt sales. A lot of our retail and banking customers use third-party vendors in their collections environments, either from a BPO perspective or to collect on for them because of capacity constraints. And then at some point, debt sales would come into play. From a communication perspective, traditional forms of communication channels are used. So we've typically got phone calls, SMS, letters. In most environments today, letters have been replaced by emails, but it's one directional. So you reach out to the customer, and the expectation is for them to call back in. I had an interesting conversation with a client who said to me, we've grown our inbound area by 200% because of the number of communication that we've been sending out to customers because we want them to talk to us. If I'm a collections customer in collections and I know that I need help, I'm going to call you in any event. So was this really effective? I'm not really sure. The challenge with that, it's one way. Where we need to move in a digital environment is for it to be interactive. For you to get to a point where your customers can communicate with you through the channels that you have and self-serve when at their convenience. So in a traditional collections environment, this is what you would typically have. Over the past couple of days, you've probably heard us speak about digital transformation. So how do we bring that in to the collections world? Because there is still importance in talking to the customer and understanding where they are in order to provide them with the right solution. Now, do we have collections managers in the room? I know you're a collections manager. This is typically what you would have in your environment today, right? So where do we need to get to? We spoke a lot about customer preferences changing. What we're seeing on top of that is that the collections landscape is changing. In South Africa, our interest rate rose from 5% to 8%. We're seeing that trend globally. We have high interest rates, we have high unemployment rates, high fuel prices, and that's a trend that we're seeing globally as well. I saw an interesting stat the other day which, from the IMF, which showed global debt today is sitting at $250 trillion. So what does that mean for our customers? We are seeing more pressure on that wallet. Our clients that we work with today have seen huge volumes coming into collections. So the current traditional collections that we see today is not going to cut it. During my consulting, one of the first questions that I ask my clients is, what is your biggest business problem today? Two things come up: high impairment costs and capacity constraints, because I can't deal with the number of customers coming in, which then results in the higher impairments. So what we're going to talk about today is, what are the things that you need to consider from a capabilities perspective to cater for the customers in distress, the high volume of customers coming into collections, providing them with the right solutions that cover you from a profit and loss perspective, your higher impairment costs, how do you have a look at that, and how do you put together strategies to manage all of these together. So we spoke about where you're at today, what your current operations look like, and this just gives you an idea of very high level what you should have as a base in terms of collections operations. So how do we get to this point of transformation? I love the saying that it takes a village to raise a child. And I use it quite often when I'm talking about how do we get to this point of being a best-in-class collections operations. Over the past couple of days, we spoke a lot about using your data to understand your customers. And customer comes up as a theme more now than previously. Customer experience in collections has become a metric in measuring how you handle your customers in collections and how you treat customers in collections. Now, why has that become important? So, historically, the collections was kind of like the termination of the credit life cycle. And we saw changes in terms of treatment of customers once they get into collections. But what we saw during COVID is that the nature of the customers coming into collections was very different to what we had seen previously. Yes, they were still customers in distress. What we didn't fully understand was how long was it going to take them to recover from this? I mean, none of us had been through a pandemic before. Well, most of us had not been through a pandemic before. And FICO did some analysis to understand, what is that point of return to financial good? And that had reduced substantially in comparison to customers who were normally in distress versus customers that were in distress because of COVID implications. But we treated them the same in collections. We ran them through a normal collection strategy. We sent them to our DCAs, we wrote them off, we sold them, but they recovered very quickly. And who got the benefit of that? The DCA, not the bank. But the result of that is that the bank lost the customer because we provided them with the wrong treatment and the wrong solution. So one of the key components in order to get to that point is understanding your customers using analytically and data-driven strategies. There's something new in terms of using technology. How many of you actually like talking to your banking consultant on the phone? Nobody. When was the last time you went into a branch to transact or to apply for a product? Can't remember? So the world has changed. And why is that? Because the banks have adapted to this digital world. We were forced to create applications on digital channels to open accounts. But we didn't transition that into the collections world, where our customers could interact with us, make payment arrangements, work out themselves what would be the most appropriate forbearance option for them, and have that ability to kind of manage their debt by themselves. Our customers are very smart these days. They know how to manage their income and expenditure. And typically, a customer in collections doesn't pay you, not because they don't want to pay you, but it's because they can't pay you. But they also don't want to deal with it in terms of, you rather come to me with options rather than me coming to you. It's an emotional thing that they need to deal with. I've put a couple of examples on here, chatbots, email, etc., that will give you an idea of some of the tools that you need in order to get to that point where your customers can interact with you 24/7, they can self-serve, and the overarching result of that is one of the challenges that a collections manager has today is managing collections cost. You'll see that reduction in your cost. There have been a couple of sessions on omni-channel communication, and we hear that you do have omni-channel communication. The difference in a transformation program, though, is that what we do at FICO is we create a journey for your customer. So it's about understanding which is the channel of preference, when you should contact the customer, and creating a path that drives conversation. And I'll give you an example. So in the traditional way of doing collections, you would have a treatment part. So send an SMS on day 1, send an email on day 3, call the customer on day 10. And a lot of us have been doing that for many years. And it's not wrong. But let's think about a customer in collections. You need to create urgency. So what we do is build a treatment plan, or treatment path, that nudges them to contact you. So on a day, you'd send an SMS in the morning. If you haven't received a response, either through your call center or on your messaging, you'd send a nudge to say, hey, Mr. Customer, we've tried to contact you. We've got options for you, with tonality that entices them to come to speak to you. The other thing that I want to mention is, in the digital world, collections is about doing empathetic collections. We've seen changes in that. The customers that you're harsh on don't necessarily want to come and talk to you. With the competition that's coming in, I mean, we used to have 5 big banks in South Africa. Today we've got over 20. They're just going to go move their account to another bank. So it's about creating that loyalty as well by showing them that you've got options for them and they should come and talk to you. And over and above all of this, I'm going to bring it back to that digitally enabled consultant. I was working with a client in the UK, and we had just implemented an omni-channel solution for them. And he said to me, it's great. My payments are going up, but I have a serious problem. My RPCs are going down. So I said to him, okay, how is that a problem? Because your payments are going up. He says, yes, but that collections metric of RPCs needs to go up. And I said to him, but let's look at your RPCs in totality. So, and RPC is right party contacts. And I said, let's look at it in totality. So today you're measuring your RPCs on a dialer. What you should be doing is measuring every single successful contact with your customer. Part of this digital transformation is rethinking the way you use your old collections metrics to what you're using today in terms of your strategic initiatives and moving towards this digital environment. And we bring all of that together to understand our customers, understand then how do we manage our portfolios in order to drive those outcomes that we're looking for at a business level. So you're probably asking me, well, it's great, I understand, but what is it that I need to do? These are some of the capabilities that you would need today in order to get to that point of having a digitally enabled collections portfolio. So we spoke about data and analytics. What we're seeing in the collections world today is the use of very different data to determine how we treat our customers. Historically, you had to wait probably about 6 months in order to fully understand your customer's affordability. It has to be done real time today. We're using real-time data, transactional data, to identify customers who are going to come into collections. And that's become significantly important because of IFRS 9. So those of you who understand the ins and outs of IFRS 9 will understand that now, today, you've got to provide a whole provisions on customers as soon as you book them, which makes it all the more important for you to understand the customers who are heading into troubled waters. So using transactional data will help you identify customers' spending patterns and potentially identify early risk indicators. Changes in payment behavior. If you were here last year, you would have heard me talk about understanding customers' payment hierarchy. So understanding what is important for them to pay and which products of theirs are at the top of their list to pay when they can pay. So understanding that and looking at it at a customer level has become a key necessity in terms of determining how to treat them. Segmentation is an interesting one. We've always known collections to be a very intuitive process, but that has changed. Today we have tools that we didn't have 10 or 15 years ago. We have tools that will help us understand how previous segment treatment has been performing, and you get to that optimal point of understanding what is the best treatment. The program that I worked with over the 3 years, when we were reviewing their collection strategies, they had 52 treatment paths designed in their card portfolio. And why was that? Because they were trying to champion, challenge, and test and learn which would be the best outcome for their customer. Once we had gone through the optimization process with them, we narrowed it down to 5 treatment paths, and with better outcomes than what they were getting previously. So using your data to understand your segments and how to deal with them, and then I've spoken about how to assess their financial capability as well. We spoke a lot about data streaming, getting real-time information, but also understanding what information is relevant today versus what is not. And that you'll get through the data analytics piece as well. I'm not really going to touch on decision optimization. There's a session just after this that Ulrich Wiesner is presenting with Matt Stanley that you should attend if you want to understand a little bit more about optimization. I think today, was it Bill, I think, may have spoken about it, optimization a little bit. But essentially, it's a mathematical process that helps you understand what strategies will drive the best outcome for your customer. Strategy execution. You can have the most sophisticated strategy, but if your execution component is not working, or they're not aligned to how you envision your strategy, it's going to be pointless. This is a big part of transforming your collections environments digitally. I used to work for one of the biggest banks in Africa, and at one point I moved from the risk team into the collections operations team because I thought to myself, well, they're not getting it right, so let me go and do it, so maybe I'll get it right, and because I know exactly what I want to happen. It is one of the most challenging things to explain to an operations person what your intention is behind a risk strategy. And kudos to operations management for that, for handling risk teams. But the one thing that it made me realize was there's certainly a connection between the two. A lot of the organizations that we work with have created a role in their team to transition the risk strategies into operations. How this has changed over the past couple of years is take away less reliance on the manual work. Automate processes. It makes it a lot easier from an implementation perspective. It makes it a lot easier from a monitoring perspective. And you're most likely to get to that outcome of, I'd probably say about 99% of execution of your actual strategy. From a communication perspective, now we've seen a huge change from traditional collections to digital collections. We have got auto voice capability, so you can deal with scalability, you can scale quickly. Two-way messaging, and I touched on it a bit earlier, on the importance of having that interactive conversation with your customers. Email, very effective. Chatbot, creating solutions and options for the customers to self-serve on the web portals and in-app messaging. This is the way the world is going. I mean, and not only in the collections world, but everyday life. And we are working with our customers to get to that point of let your customers choose what they want to do. I want to just tell you about the program that I worked with. So it was with one of the largest banks in Africa. In fact, they spoke about the transformation program last year at FICO World. Now, we worked with over 300 people within the organization across 4 product houses. We helped them implement scorecards, move to a data-driven strategic approach, set up their MIS and reporting to understand how their collection strategies are performing, implemented an omni-channel solution for them. They were one of the few banks that actually hit a 100% response rates when COVID hit, because they had a digitally enabled strategy. It took 3 years to get there. Today, they're in an environment where they are using optimization to enhance their strategies. Their collections portfolios are seeing massive benefits in terms of lower impairments. And South Africa is really struggling from an economic perspective. But today, they have the tools in place that have enabled them to get to the point of getting to that digital collections environment. So a couple of key takeaways I'm going to quickly summarize. The key thing is segment, target, personalize. Understand what your customers have to say. Understand what options you can give them in order to deal with who they are, what they need, and then test and learn. Test and learn what is the best approach. What is going to be best for the customer as well as best for you, and measure what you do. So, in summary, it does take a village to raise a child, and this digitally enabled collection environment is your child. Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over to Jaren, who's going to take you through how you can do this on FICO platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Shivani. So I absolutely love this topic. And I love thinking about why this is important. So there was a lot of information there, but what does this really mean? So if we look at the end of 2023, the consumer credit market globally hit over $10 billion, with projections that in 2029, that's going to hit over $14 billion. And I'm not a math expert, but I can associate that as that number grows, our number here in collections will probably grow as well. So as we start to see this move to the digital age more and more, and consumers are doing most of their banking and transactions and everything in the digital world, it's critical that we follow that and we meet them where they are. So I love this concept of personalization. I love this concept of empathetic collections. I did a session yesterday talking about hyper-personalization and personalization approaches, and we had Allison on stage as well yesterday from Forrester talking about empathy and trust and why that matters across the gamut of the customer lifecycle. But I always think so much that it's critical in the collections process. As Shivani mentioned, when we saw kind of this shift with COVID, it became more and more imperative to embrace this concept of empathetic collections. You know, is Jaren a first-time offender? Maybe I just lost my job. I'm going through a hardship that I've never gone through before, or am I a repeat offender? And then being able to understand that about me and then respond in ways that matter to me to ensure that we're meeting, Jaren, this is just a weird way of saying it, to ensure that we're meeting me where I am, is more critical than ever. So I love what Shivani said, because it's all about personalization. So how do we do that from a FICO perspective? I always think of it as the intelligent collection process, the intelligent collection loop. So a lot of times people will come to us and from a collection standpoint, they say, are you guys a collection system? Like, are you a system of record? And this is how FICO views our standpoint in collection. So we are not necessarily the system of record. We're, a lot of the times what we see is that those big collection systems, they're very rigid, they're expensive, they take a long time to implement. But getting inside and being able to make changes in there, to do decisioning, to bring in your analytics, bring in your data, it's not that simple. So the way that we view this, we talk a lot about applied intelligence. I'm sure you've heard that a lot this week, is we are the applied intelligence layer that sits along with your system of records, your collection systems, to give you that unified layer for all things data, analytics, decisioning, simulation, optimization, and the like. So this is how we tie in. So obviously when we're thinking about the collections process, it all starts with data. When we're thinking about empathetic collections, about personalized collections, it starts with getting in the right data at the right time to make use of it. So what internal data do we have about this customer? What do we know about them? What external data can we bring in to continue to build on that holistic picture of them? What can we augment with? What alternative data is out there that allows us to understand this customer, get a complete picture of who they are? We can then use analytics, inject analytics directly into our strategy. So the propensity to cure models, MPV models, all of these things that allow us to then understand our data, get to a more granular understanding, a more granular segmentation of who our clients are. All of this can lead us to what is the best collection strategy. So how do we ensure that we are optimizing not just the strategies, but also like the contact strategies, understanding how does Jaron want to be contacted? What is my preferred channel of choice? What is the correct tonality to use? What is the timing cadence to use? All of these things meeting me where I am drives that personalized experience. Somebody asked me a while ago, we were talking about it and it came up in conversation, and it was how do we reduce late stage collections? And it was like, well, somebody's like, dude, that's an easy answer, just don't let them get that far. But somebody said, like, the hard part in this process is that a lot of the times what we see is that somebody who's in collections is in collections a lot of places. So it's almost a race to get there first. It's a race to be the first one to try to get that money and to get that prioritization. And one of the ways to do that is to understand your clients, reach out as predictively as possible before they get into that cycle, before they start rolling into early and late stage and then into recoveries. But all of that is at the heart personalization. It's having the data, it's understanding the data, and then it's reacting in ways that matter. So once we actually have determined what is the right contact strategy, we then need to execute on that strategy. So FICO, we have our omni-channel communication service that can actually go out, automate that, whether it be email, SMS, text messaging, calling, whatever it may be. We can actually automate that contact strategy, send that back in for reporting within the platform. The platform can then run simulations as well, so you can go in and do some pressure testing on your strategies. Understand if I was to make a change to my production strategies, what would the impact be to my KPI before I even put that into production? So it gives you a place to go in and do all of your pressure testing on your strategies to understand what the impact would be to KPIs before you actually make changes in production. So really powerful there. You can then also use optimization. So as Shivani mentioned, we have an optimization session coming up after this. I won't get too deep into that because they're going to cover it at length. It's going to be a great session. Highly recommend it. But then sending all of that back in to really create that feedback loop of what's working, what do we know about the customer, and then being able to continue to act accordingly on that. And all of this leads and is really involved in the digital innovation lifecycle. So you've heard a lot this week and this morning about things like composability. So designing a ecosystem or an architecture deployment that is centered around this composable mindset where you can bring in the pieces that you need. So whether your organization needs help from a data ingestion perspective or a third-party data ingestion perspective, whether you need help from analytical, whether it's model development or model execution, making use and getting value out of your analytics, whether it be from a decisioning standpoint or whether it be from a simulation and optimization standpoint, all of this feeds into this digital innovation lifecycle that is really composable in nature, meets your business where you are, and enhances all of the technologies and processes that you have in place to enhance, augment, and make your collection strategy, your collection business better than it is at the moment. So that's kind of how FICO views our stance or our place in the collections world right now. But all of this really driving towards that personalized approach, that empathetic approach to collections. And then what do we see? What's the outcome? So there was a session yesterday, we dove a little deeper into it. I'm sure they will talk about more from an optimization standpoint in the next session. But this is a client success story that came out pretty recently. It was about AGL, and they went into this personalized digital collections target where they were really driving personalization at scale. And the success that they saw with FICO platform was just, our FICO technology was just absolutely incredible. So they were able to boost their payments by 40%. They saw a 29% uplift of one-click token payments, saw an uplift of 19 million Australian dollars in cash collections. They won last year a decision award for their debt management practice. So clients are seeing massive success with the platform. This is one of many. We'd be happy to share more success stories of clients across the globe that have really transformed their collections business with FICO technology, with FICO platform, and are seeing great results in the business, which is going to be even more and more critical as we move forward in the next couple of years as the credit market continues to grow.